Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Agile Workplace Leaders webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm Becky Kirby, the Director of Workplace Innovation here at AgilQuest, and I'll be facilitating today's topic, personal ROI from the new workplace. What's in it for me? Our Workplace Leaders series is a monthly educational lectures and panel discussion designed to share expertise and experience from industry experts and frontline workplace practitioners with you, the workplace leaders, who are bringing change to both business and government every day. By gathering these voices and giving you the opportunity to interact and ask your own questions, we hope to make your workplace program more successful and effective. Today's topic and presenters will be sharing key insights and stories around the benefits each individual worker can enjoy in flexible and alternative workplace programs. In addition to hearing what kinds of benefits are common, we will also hear which methods are most effective in communicating those benefits with your employees and what stage these communication methods are most effective. Whether you want higher adoption, increased employee satisfaction, better talent acquisition, or all three, today's presenters will have much to share with the valuable to your programs. We have saved time for the audience questions at the end of the talk, so please use the Q&A facility in your WebEx toolbar to submit your questions as you think of them during the presentation. At the end of the prepared slides, we will answer as many of the questions as time permits. We will answer questions in the order they were submitted, so please type yours in as you think of them throughout the presentation. We have two great presenters sharing their experiences and expertise today. Kate Lister. Kate is the president of Global Workplace Analytics, a consulting and research firm that specializes in helping all stakeholders understand and embrace the business case for telework, for mobile work, flexible work, workplace wellness, and other agile workplace strategies. And we also have Mika Cross. Mika is a seasoned human capital workplace and policy strategist specializing in global strategic workplace initiatives, flexible workplace programs, cultural transformation, diversity and inclusion, and employee engagement. For more information about Kate and Mika and the great work they're doing, you can find their biographies and contact information at the end of this presentation. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Kate and begin our Communicating Personal ROI webinar. Kate?
Hello, everyone. And thank you for the introduction there. And thank you to AgilQuest for having us here. I'm always eager to talk about how Agile workplace strategies are good for people, planet, and profits, but I was particularly delighted to be asked to focus this time on the employee side of the equation. It seems in many cases they're the afterthought. They're what organizations are forced to think about once they start to run up against resistance in some of these new workplace programs. And hopefully in this conversation, it'll lead us to being a bit more mindful about the fact that these new workplace strategies simply won't work unless the employees are on board. Many of you have maybe already discovered that. And to get them on board, we need to answer the all-important questions: why are we doing it? Why are we doing this? And what's in it for me? And I don't seem to be advancing. There we go. Of course, how you answer those questions is going to differ on who you're talking to, and obviously what might motivate a senior executive toward adopting new ways of working is not the same thing that will motivate a middle manager or an employee, which is our focus for today. But once you have the answer to those questions framed in that perspective of the employee, you need to communicate them clearly through the change process. So we'll also be talking about what we and others have found to be the most effective ways of doing that. We'll also be leaving you with a number of tools and resources that will help you create your organization's, and your employees' own return on investment. My perspective in all this is based both in extensive research on the topic and work with public and private sector organizations that engage me either as they embark on a new way of working or, unfortunately, and more typically, after they're well into the process, only to realize their if we build it, they will come strategy isn't really working. Mika's perspective, both personally and as someone who's responsible for helping others make the transition to new workplace strategies throughout government, offers a lot of real-life insights into both the obstacles and the opportunities to success. So Mika, I think it would help the audience if they understood a little bit about your crazy work and personal life.
Sure, Kate. I'm happy to share. And thanks for including me in the conversation. Most often, I'm helping organizations understand how to successfully put in place their flexible workplace programs that are effective in delivering the results they want to see. And for those of us in the federal government, those results often include continuity of our operations during times when the work of government could normally be interrupted, reduction of leased office space and utilities costs, enhanced recruitment and retention of a diverse and inclusive workforce, as well as increased productivity and employee engagement. But you know, as a single working mother of two, I know the personal benefits firsthand of how flexibility can enhance my overall well-being without compromise to the progression of my own career. And I'm happy to be here to share with you some of the most effective strategies I've found for remaining visible, relevant, and able to collaborate with your team, customers, when you might not be physically located in the traditional office.
And Mika is too modest to mention this, but she is a finalist in the Fed Government Next Generation Award Program, and we'll actually go into a ceremony tonight where she'll find out whether she won. So good luck, Mika.
Thank you.
It's not like winning awards is something new to you. Okay, so the fact is that about 80% of employees say they want to work from home or remotely, and a third say they would even take a pay cut to do so. But even for those who want to, change is hard. So I challenge you, for example, over this next week, reverse the order of your shower. If you usually start at the top, start at the bottom, or vice versa. And I think what you'll find is even that a small change can be very uncomfortable, if not impossible to maintain. And that's something with no real ramifications. At the end of the shower, you're still clean, right? Compare that to asking people to make a change as big as telework or unassigned desking, both of which involve a lot of real and perceived implications.
That's so true, Kate. And best practices are often born after learning the remedies for things that could have been done better. And when it comes to trying to implement telework and flexible work arrangements that help drive things like hoteling or desk sharing strategies, there have been plenty of opportunities to learn from those who have adopted these initiatives early on. That's actually really good news for those of you who are just embarking on a new workplace strategy. You can and should easily learn from the organizations who have adjusted their strategies when trying this out previously. There's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Very true. And in terms of best practices, these are some that have bubbled to the top. We're not going to have time to talk about all of them. Largely, we'll focus on the ones in red here. 4 decades have gone by since companies have started with some of these alternative workplace strategies. So there's lots to learn from the mistakes of others. So again, our focus is going to be on getting employee buy-in and showing them the what's in it for me is kind of the first order of business and the theme for this webinar. So let's start there. The results are in. One-size-fits-all approach to this in terms of how and where people work doesn't work. We're all different. Our age, our upbringing, our individual natures, and our culture all coalesce to make us individuals. So managers really need to recognize this if they're going to help their people understand what's in it for them as individuals.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think the concept of understanding that it's a shared responsibility between both manager and employee is equally important. You know, acknowledging that not all arrangements will or can be approved and implemented the same way across the board is key to customizing these flexible programs to really make them work for both the individual and the organization. I mean, with 5 generations currently in the workforce, not everyone works the same way. So what might be effective for one person won't look the same for another. Same with various types of positions and occupations. But open, transparent communication between managers and their employees is key to explaining why certain arrangements may work for one person but not the other. And that's okay. They're meant to be implemented that way. That's why they're called flexible workplace programs.
And it's not just one, I mean, it really is one person to the other. I get really tired of hearing, Gen Y likes this and boomers like that, because there are big differences between how we all work. I have a friend who uses the expression, one size fits none. I think that says it best. Okay, so what is it? What is in it for employees? Agile workplace strategies can save them three of their most precious commodities: time, money, and health. Fact is, employees are bummed out, burned out, and stressed out, and they can't be asked to do more with less forever. Across generations, what we hear is they want flexibility in how, when, and where they work. So in terms of just time, a typical employee can save the equivalent of 2 to 3 work weeks a year, time they would have otherwise spent commuting, by either working at home or closer to home just half of the time. In big cities, Washington and New York and LA, those savings are even greater.
That's true, Kate. And, it's not really about finding a balance between both work and life. It's about finding the right mix. It's about integrating how, where, and when we work with the various priorities in our lives outside of the workplace. So while this is equally important to all workers today, not just women or parents or people on the brink of retirement, it is particularly important to Gen Yers, who organizations are on a global level trying to woo to the workforce.
Full disclosure here, I think you're Gen Y, right?
I'd rather not say.
I'm a boomer. And we boomers accepted the prescribed path. I mean, Gen Y, not so much. And while I have to admit, once having the attitude of, they just need to buckle down and get with the program, I'm now starting to think that they have it right. Regardless of how you feel, though, they will be leading your organization in the next decade, so you really have to pay attention. So the second whiffing for employees is money. Allowing them to work where they want saves them big money. A typical employee can save between $2,000 and $6,000 a year by being allowed to work outside the office, again, just half the time. This conversation often gets polar. Oh, I'll never see my employees, I'll never see my colleagues, I'll never see my coworkers. It's just not the case. Most of these remote work arrangements are a mix of the two. In fact, offices are becoming the place that you go for collaboration, and home and third spaces are becoming the place that you go for concentration. So these are some of the ways that employees typically save money, but there's more. I mean, there's things like the potential to save money on elder care. I think we all agree that taking care of a small child at home is not compatible with any long-term telework. You might do it on a day that your child's sick or something like that, but most organizations agree that that's not a good idea with small children. It's not so true with elder care. You just need to have somebody around, and there's a big elder care crisis coming in this country as a result of aging boomers. There's also ways to save money in terms of all those office gifts, the shopping sprees at lunchtime and on the way to work and the way back from work. In some cases where, it is a more full-time arrangement, employees are sometimes able to move to less expensive areas as a result of these arrangements. So the savings can be significant. And I'll be sharing with you at the end here a link to our employee savings calculator where you can estimate the potential savings for yourself and also share it with your employees so that they can estimate theirs. So the next whiff is employee health. There's just no doubt that having control over your life reduces stress. In fact, there's a number of studies that show just offering employees an ounce of control, even if they don't take advantage of the flexibility that they're offering, improves their stress levels. I mean, some stress is good. It keeps us engaged and in the game, but chronic stress is quite literally a killer. And workplace stress is largely the result of work-life conflict, changes taking place at work, your relationships with other people at work, financial concerns, and not having control over what you do or how you do it. Other stresses include lousy managers, playing in traffic, office politics. Some people say they enjoy getting out of the office because it just gets them away from all that annoying chatter. And another stressor is you being forced to work in an environment that is outside of your comfort zone. The other elements of the health impacts, workplace remote work programs can help in the spread of disease. In fact, the original telework program in the federal government way back in 2000 was put in place for the fear of pandemic. At the time, it was bird flu. It can help people with some environmental allergies if their allergies are spiked up. It can reduce the peer pressure that causes people to come to work when they're not well. The presenteeism. The Brits have a great name for this. They call them mucus troopers.
Well, that's so disgusting. It's definitely true. I'd rather have my workforce, keep healthy than come into the office and infect everybody. So for those of us in the federal workplace, telework and flexible work arrangements have also been effective strategies for attracting returning military veterans and individuals with disabilities to come work for us. Even people who may be dealing with short-term health issues or helping to care for other family members or loved ones may be able to use flexible work programs during times that they're able to be effectively on duty time, when perhaps recovering from an auto accident or surgery. And what that means is rather than being off altogether from work, which can impact a team's performance, many organizations are now offering ways to allow for combined use of telework or flexible work arrangements, along with some sick leave or time off to account for medical appointments or therapies, etc. And this really benefits the overall health and wellness of an individual while still allowing for work to get done, when appropriate, of course.
Trooper that she is, just last week, as Mika and I were working on this webinar, she had her son had 103-degree fever, and she was still able to, take the meetings that were crucial.
Yeah, it worked out nicely, especially because my mother was in town and able to care for him while I was on duty time. So I combined a combination of sick leave when I couldn't be on official duty time with times that I could while she was caring for him, and that enabled me to still, take care of all the priorities that I needed to in my job.
Perfect. Another way that this impacts health is that by forcing the issue of results-based management, remote work can help with engagement, help in building trust, increase accountability, and a whole lot more. And all these things also impact a person's health. The GSA regional administrator, Sharon Wall, has a line that I really like. She said that telework doesn't create management problems, it reveals them. One thing that it reveals is that managers need to learn how to manage by results. And the fact is, AgilQuest has done all kinds of study, and a number of others have. The employees are not in the building for the most part, or they're not at their desk. All of the studies show that people are away from their desk about 60% of the time. So, trying to manage by the back of somebody's head simply doesn't work. And as you move into these remote work programs, organizations are forced to realize that they have to learn to manage differently, which, by the way, management experts in the 50s have been telling us is the way to manage. Give people the autonomy and the authority to do their job and get out of their way.
I agree 100% on this issue, Kate. And as you mentioned before, organizations are looking for more effective ways to do business better, to deliver enhanced customer service, and to be able to focus on increased productivity overall. And flexible working requires a strong, consistent performance management process, but it also can enhance the working relationship between managers, employees, and team members. I mean, just ask any manager who's currently working with employees on various work schedules or telework arrangements. The need to leverage technology to help continue collaboration, it's absolutely key. And often, it can even improve team performance and the way they work together to get the job done.
Absolutely. And then there's a lot more benefits too. It doesn't all come down to time, money, and health. There's things like being able to, meet the refrigerator repairman at the convenient hours of between 9 and 5, or go to a parent-teacher meeting, or throw in a load of laundry. Even just being able to listen to the kind of music you like at your own volume can go a long way to reducing stress and improving a person's job satisfaction. Okay, so let's shift gears. That was the, what's in it for me for the employee, but we also said that the other question you have to answer is, why are we doing this? Unless you answer this, you will come up against resistance. And nobody likes to be told what to do. They need to understand the reason why. Before I move on here, just a reminder, if you have any questions, be sure to go ahead and type them in that chat box as you think of them. We'll be taking them in the order that they come in at the end here, so get them in early. So why are we doing this? In a word, sustainability. And I mean that in the broadest sense. Organizations are learning that in order to survive, they need to have sustainable practices for people, planet, and profits. They all go hand in hand. The government.
This is so very true. I was just going to mention, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, you go.
Yeah, I was going to tag along on what you were saying because this is so very true for government right now. Leaders are constantly looking for new and innovative ways to stay ahead of the change so that are able to manage it. And it's a really exciting time to see all the positive progress that's being made to better the way we serve the American public.
Yeah, leading private sector companies are finally getting to this too, Mika. It's a good thing to see. And part of it is breaking down those silos and, involving HR and real estate and, not trying to drive this just because we're trying to save money or just because we're trying to reduce office space, but understanding the broader element of what these new workplace strategies offer. So let's start with the people part of sustainability. I'm sure you've heard that people are an organization's most expensive asset. They're far more expensive and, by the way, valuable than buildings. In fact, they're so expensive that a loss of just 10 minutes of productivity a week would entirely offset a 25% reduction in a person's office space. So let me explain. Now, if math is not your strong suit, feel free to take my word for it and go ahead and check your email for the next 2 slides. Actually, better yet, stick it out because this is important, and it's not talked about enough. Okay, so let's say a typical company spends $10,000 a year to provide an employee with office space. If they can make that space 25% smaller, they save $2,500 a year, right? And that's what a lot of companies are doing. They're just, chopping down the size of the office space or going to an entirely open office. But let's say that person who makes $100,000 a year, let's say, loses an hour of productivity a week because of this new office environment. Maybe it's too noisy, maybe they don't have enough privacy, whatever the reason. Over the year, that lost productivity would add up to $2,500, and the company would have negated all of the savings in office space. But wait a minute, I said a 25% reduction in office space is the equivalent of 10 minutes of productivity a week, not an hour. So how does that work? Well, in reality, the company doesn't hire an employee just to offset their salary. There's no profit in that. So an employee's productivity is far greater than their salary. In the financial services sector, for example, they have metrics on this in pretty much every industry, but there's an average of $600,000 for every $100,000 they make. So any increase you make in their productivity has a 6 times impact on revenue. Now, when you take that into account, it moves that break even on $2,500 in savings to just 10 minutes of lost productivity a week. Anything a company can do to make its people more productive will have a huge impact on revenue. And one way that's been proven to increase productivity is through workplace flexibility. Depending on the industry, I've seen increases of between 5 and 50% in productivity through these remote work strategies. So still focusing on that people side of the equation of why we're doing this. There's the issue of employee engagement. I'm sure you've heard that according to Gallup, more than 60% of the workforce is not engaged. They are, for the most part, doing their jobs, but they're not inclined to give anything else. Another 24% are disengaged, something Gallup defines as either wandering around in a fog or undermining their coworkers' success. Just the kind of people you want to have around. So those kinds of metrics obviously don't bode well for a sustainable workforce. But guess what? It turns out that allowing employees control over where and when they work increases engagement. I know Mika has some experience with this in the federal government.
Absolutely, Kate. This is a key factor for leaders to pay attention to right now. The focus on employee engagement is such a hot topic. For the government, if you look at the organizations who are ranked highest on the Best Places to Work Index, and that's determined by the scores of the annual Federal Employee Viewpoint Surveys, many of them have implemented flexible work programs early on, from telework to alternative or compressed work schedules and health and wellness programs. These organizations understand that there's a strong correlation between employee choice, support, and employer results. And research shows that when employees feel like they have greater autonomy, as you mentioned, in their positions, and feel like they have a choice in how, when, and where they work, that they're able to do their best work, and productivity increases. As well, their feelings of being connected to the job, which ultimately leads to greater engagement and retention overall, increase as well. So it's an interesting paradigm here.
Yeah, the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey is really a good gauge because it's been done consistently over the years, and they do show the correlation between being able to work flexibly and job satisfaction, engagement, and so forth. So, I mean, you know, this is real stuff. So another element of all this is that flexible work alternatives reduce turnover and help in attracting talent. Worldwide, companies are wringing their collective hands over the looming talent shortage. I mean, I read something about it almost every day. And they should be. There was a global study by LinkedIn just recently and found that 79% of the U.S. workforce is actively or passively looking for a new employer. You know, they're not hunkered down anymore, just glad to have a job. And among the passive lookers, and that's about half of the group, improved work-life balance is among the top 3 reasons that they would jump ship.
You know, Kate, this is true in my own situation, and I personally have gravitated towards position offers and organizations that both value and allow for flexibility and a certain degree of autonomy over ones that do not. So as organizations look to these programs as a strategic driver for recruiting and retaining top talent, it's an imperative to offer a variety of options, especially when you might be asking people to change the way they think about where they work and what their space looks like.
The same LinkedIn survey, which, as I said, was conducted just this year, it included 18,000 global employees. It also showed that more than 60% of job seekers say having a reputation to be a great place to work is far more important to them in a potential employer than what the company does, how prestigious it is, or its reputation for having great people. So this stuff really matters. Flexible work options show that the employer cares about its people and it trusts them to work untethered. And there's increasing public pressure on transparency around an organization's people practices, much like we've seen in reporting environmental sustainability. And I can't help thinking of Walmart when I think about this. Anybody want to wager any guesses on the public perception of Walmart as an employer? Not so good. Also, in terms of attraction, flexible work options help solve talent shortages by increasing the talent pool to include the best and the brightest from around the planet. You know, you don't have to just hire it near your organization. Potential employees who can't or don't want to move. You know, a lot of people during the recession got upside down in their mortgages. They couldn't sell out. And also hard to reach populations like the disabled and military spouses, as Mika mentioned earlier. Okay, so the next part of the, why are we doing this is profit. Profit somehow has gotten a bad rap. It's like a dirty word. Well, without profit, there is no continuity, there is no sustainability. So, this is an important concept, and it has to be important to employees as well as employers. So, Mika, you want to talk about some of these?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll take it now. As you know, across the globe, employers are finding that workplace flexibility and agile work practices are helping them reduce the cost of things like real estate and turnover, absenteeism, healthcare, and much, much more. And I know Kate's research shows that half-time mobile work can save an employer an average of $11,000 per employee per year. In fact, at one federal agency I worked at, we were able to save a substantial amount in transit subsidy funding simply by allowing for greater adoption of telework, to the tune of $8 million in upfront fiscal year programming costs that otherwise would have had to be spent going into the transit subsidy program contract simply to pay people to get to the workplace rather than allowing them other flexible options. So the savings here was significant. Also, organizations that aren't realizing these kind of savings really will not be able to compete well with those that are. So with better access to talent and a more nimble approach on how and where people work, organizations can really scale up or down more quickly than their competitors.
I'll be sharing here at the end also a link to our workplace savings calculator for employers that goes through how that $11,000 a year is calculated and allows you to go in and put in your own assumptions. Okay, so the third part of sustainability is how we more typically think about it, is the planet. I think I missed something here. Oh, nope, sorry. Just a couple of things in terms of profit. It's not all about money. In fact, I just got back from a conference in the UK where the head of workplace strategy for BBC referred to the millions they saved as a result of the change in their workplace strategy as collateral savings. The real benefits, he said, came from greater productivity, better goal alignment, increased accountability, and personal empowerment. They just completely transformed the workforce by trusting them and by giving them some autonomy and control. Okay, so now to the planet part of this, the environmental part of this. Whether for altruistic reasons or because of public pressure, or sometimes to avoid environmental penalties, which are increasing, organizations are realizing that they just can't continue to pollute the planet and drain its natural resources and add to the gridlock that chokes our largest cities. Status quo it's not sustainable. So cutting down on commuter travel is by far the easiest, cheapest, and most effective way for an organization to reduce its carbon footprint. Now, our research shows that if those U.S. workers with compatible jobs and a desire to work remotely did so just half the time, the environmental savings would equate to taking the entire New York State workforce off the road. And the energy savings from the commuter travel reductions would equal 47% of our Persian Gulf imports. And we've accounted for things like, yes, but you're also going to have to drive on your remote work days. You can't just take the kids to school, the days that you go to the office. These are very conservative estimates. Beyond that, leading-edge workplace strategies can also increase an organization's environmental sustainability through a number of other things like those that are listed here. I know one company that was moving their several offices into one of these new office activity-based working environments, and they gave every person a milk crate, and that was all they were allowed to take out of their office. So, talk about being able to do away with paper. It made a huge impact.
That's interesting. I've worked in agencies that have really embraced testing out even just mobile work or telework for a full week to see the environmental impacts during National Telework Week. And it's been so amazing to see the environmental impacts and savings that we were able to accomplish by participating in a drill like that. And some of our organizations even used it kind of as a pilot project as well. And as it turns out, those entering the workforce are far more interested in working for a company that cares about the environment than those who preceded them. Yet, just another bonus for attracting talent.
Sad but true. Okay, so, we've got our WIFMs, we've got our what's in it for me, we've got our why are we doing this? So now we've got to communicate that to the employees.
There are all kinds of ways, Kate, to spread the word, but not all communications are created equally. So what you say, when you say it, and how you say it all matter, and matter greatly. And more importantly, ensuring that your employees feel that they are a part of the change, that they have a say in providing feedback or input along the way is key to having them feel connected to your change strategy overall.
Mika's a master at this. She, I've seen her in her former role in government get 1,000 people on these webinars and teleconferences because they're so interested in talking about it and because she makes it so easy for them to be honest and open. So she's really got a lot to offer there. So what we're going to do now is look at what works best across these major time frames in the evolution of a workplace change program. I mean, this is just our experience and, a lot of the readings that we've done. And of course, nothing is hard and fast, so your mileage may vary because of all the things that we talked about at the beginning. You're going to need to determine for yourself what works best within your own organization culture and even within various internal groups. Okay, so let's start with the planning phase. We're just starting to kick off this new workplace strategy. This is the time for gathering data, for identifying champions and pilot candidates, for testing whether your assumptions about what you think you know about how employees will react, what they say they want and what they actually want are correct. And it's also the time for testing whether your technology is up to speed with your strategy, as well as your human and cultural readiness. The key here is to make the process safe and transparent and to not screw it up so that you have to start backpedaling later. These are the kinds of activities that I feel are best suited at this stage. First of all, meetings where you share the vision, show transparency, preempt that rumor mill, and open the lines of communication. I kind of like face-to-face meetings at this point. They're particularly useful because you can see people's body language, which often tells you a whole lot more than what they say. Online training can be extremely useful at this stage for creating a unified vision, for acknowledging the obstacles. This isn't not to paint it rosy here. We understand that there are going to be some issues we need to deal with. This is where you're going to be showing the what's in it for me's and answering the questions that they have in a way that's consistent and thoughtful. And I like online training for that kind of thing. AgilQuest just happens to have that kind of training, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I would have said that even if they didn't. Anonymous surveys at this point can help you test for readiness and pick up hints about potential obstacles. And by the way, if you're using multiple choice questions in your surveys, be sure to add write-in comments. Allow for them. They're often a much richer source of information and can help you gauge the emotions behind their ABC answers. Focus groups can help you dig deeper into what the surveys are telling you. They're also a good way of gaining buy-in and involving employees in the process. And crucially at this time also, it's critical that senior leaders set the example, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And sociometrics can help you better understand who your influencers, naysayers, and champions are likely to be. And depending on how sophisticated you want to get, this might include self-reporting, clipboard observations, badge data, even high-tech versions that actually sense interactivity. Okay, Mika, the pilot stage.
Yeah, great. I just think the sociometrics piece is so fascinating, especially as the government looks to more data-driven program management overall. So I think it's fascinating. Thanks for highlighting that. Okay, well, when in the pilot stage, the dialogue is more going to be focused around enlisting and engaging participants, keeping the rest of the organization in the loop regarding progress, and kind of creating a buzz. Training, but more focused on simply the nuts and bolts. Many organizations forget that they can't just tell people to work differently and expect them to excel. Beyond the resistance to change issue, there are existing policies, processes, and practices that need to be communicated in a consistent and scalable way. And of course, you'll continue to test and assess readiness, obstacles, and processes, and really be open to feedback from your labor partners and the workforce at large. Of course, the line of communication goes both ways. So getting back to that concept of a shared responsibility for success, employees who want to work flexibly often need to learn how to effectively communicate in a way that will assure their managers and coworkers, and even their customers, that they're available, accessible, and working on the right things. So along with that, with a good, strong, and consistent results-based performance management system, this really will help drive successful adoption of really any type of flexible work arrangement, and it will matter less about the where and more about the how and the results. This, of course, I think should be kind of obvious to most who request to participate in Flex or telework, but it's always good to turn up the volume a bit if you're at a site.
Yeah, I just love it when a government person refers to the public as customers. That's the way it ought to be.
Well, good. I'm glad. So, the key in the pilot phase is also to really learn all that you can about the process. And here are some of the methods that you might use for giving your employees a voice, for being transparent about what's working and what isn't, and also for involving those who participate in being a part of the solution. And in the end, celebrating successes and sharing with the rest of the organization. So, by the way, the last bullet here on written agreements and formal policies can really go a long way to preventing misunderstanding, as can the one before it. By talking about problems as they occur, you can prevent little problems from becoming big ones.
Alrighty, let's move on to the rollout phase. And here, it's about communicating in a way that continues to build the buzz and then brings others into the fold. Peer-to-peer endorsement is important, but research shows that employees really are looking to the top for direction. That's why leading with an unambiguous endorsement is really key. It's also critical to get your middle managers on board, as they tend to be the biggest resistors. That's a whole other topic. At this phase, what you've learned in terms of training gets rolled out to the broader audience. But again, it's time to test that it's working across these new work groups. It may require more customization to really resonate with the different cultures and functional areas. You want to keep continued vigilance around keeping those small obstacles from becoming big ones. And since bad news travels so much faster than good news, again, don't screw up. Here are some useful communication tools at this phase. Oh, by the way, before I forget, one of the groups that often gets left out of these workplace change programs is marketing. They're the guys that can help you craft the messaging. Be sure to involve them in your workplace change team. So, gathering testimonials from peers and leaders, that's a great way to share the vision. It's also a great way to alleviate fears. And keep in mind that, people differ widely in how they best digest information. Some want video, some want audio, some like to read, some like stories, some like facts, like me. Some like to, public forums, and some like to absorb things in private. So you just want to be sure that you can communicate and train in a way that offers a mix of all these kinds of things if you really want to reach a diverse group of people. And now ongoing, once you've got your strategy rolled out, of course, the strategy is not an end goal. It's a process that will continue to evolve over time. And so you should be continually learning and tweaking and enhancing it. So even if you get to that tipping point and things are chugging along smoothly, this is the time for measuring your results based on those goals that you hopefully set at the start and the baselines you hopefully established at the start. Again, a whole other topic. At some point, once this new workplace strategy becomes so culturally ingrained, it's just going to be the way you do business, and that's when you know you've succeeded. You'll also be learning, in this phase about new ways to leverage the new work styles, to be more efficient, to change the processes and practices and places. A lot of times, in these transitions, we just use a new technology to replicate what we were doing with another technology or a non-technology before. But as you get into them, you need to be open to ways that you can actually improve your way of doing things. And don't forget to share the message of what you've learned, not just internally, but externally as well. Far too few organizations are doing this. So in terms of communications at this stage, you want to continue to survey and measure results. And now is the time for PR to do its magic in spreading the word. Feature your newfound agility in the media through case studies, in your why you want to work here messaging. Make it part of your brand. Talk about it at conferences. Feature it in your annual report. Tell anybody who will listen. You've become a great place to work, and it's time to tell the world. Again, I'm just going to go through some resources real quick, and then we'll move on to questions, so be sure to type them into the panel if you have them. Okay, first, if you don't already know about it, ask your AgilQuest rep about their online learning system-based Agile Work training, which they created with their training partner, ework.com. It's been used by hundreds of thousands of worldwide employees to help spread the path to smooth the path to new ways of working. At my organization, full disclosure here, actually worked with them to write their course called The Case for Change, which addresses a lot of the things that we've been talking about here today, the visioning, the why, the with them, and so forth. And it does so separately for each constituent group. So there's one track for executives, one track for managers, and one track for non-managers. As part of this webinar, they're offering AgilQuest is offering a free 2-week trial of the Case for Change to any participants here today, and I'll have a link for you in a minute. When you download, or if you download these materials, a lot of these things are hyperlinked, so you can just click on them to get to these resources. The entire Agile Work suite of award-winning courses is shown here. It includes a variety of topics on work practice, workplace, and work processes. The Case for Change is just sort of that first course, or sometimes it's the course they go back and take after things aren't going so well. All of their materials are multimedia and fully customizable. They're 508 compliant. They've been translated in 11 different languages. But best of all, they're infinitely scalable. They're quickly deployable, and they allow you to give that consistent message and vision to your team regardless of where they are. So this first link here is for your free demo. That'll be available through August 8th. The next link is our employee workplace savings calculator. You can run through that and see what your savings are likely to be. I'll show you a screen grab of it in a minute. We have an employer savings calculator that you can use to quantify the bottom line impact, actually employee, employer, and environmental impact for your organization, and a number of white papers on ROI and results-based management and so forth. And while I'm not entirely free, you're welcome to email me if there's any questions I can answer for you. This is just kind of a quick screen grab of what you'll see at the employee savings calculator. It gives them all those gray fields. They can put in their own assumptions for what their daily costs are, and it'll crank out what the annual savings are going to be. And this is our employer calculator. Both of these are backed up by hundreds of research reports, case studies, and real-life examples. With the free light version that we have online that's available to you has just a handful of these assumptions that you can play with. The full version offers over 100 variables, and it calculates all of these kinds of impacts, as well as includes your costs of these implementations, so that you can get to a real bottom line ROI. And these are the kinds of things that it calculates for you across your whole organization. I know Mika also has some great resources for you. Do you want to say something about those, Mika?
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Kate. What I'm learning is that as part of its mission, the Office of Personnel Management provides technical assistance to federal agencies kind of to meet their most critical human capital challenges with Human Resources Solutions Division. So what's great about that is they have a team of federal HR experts, industrial psychologists, educators, and IT specialists that help agencies work to address their needs. So they also have a robust offering of telework solutions and training, change management solutions as well for the federal community. So feel free to reach out by email or by visiting their website.
And by the way, the private sector can benefit from some of those resources too. After all, we paid for them.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, here's our contact information. Feel free to get in touch. And Mika, unless you have anything else you want to add, let's turn it back to Becky and see if she has any questions for us from the audience.
That sounds good to me, Kate. Thanks.
Becky?
Great, thank you.
What do we have?
Thank you so much, Kate and Mika. I really appreciate your time. I knew you would have lots to share, and wow, that was really, really great. Well, we have quite a number of questions already in the queue, and our presenters are eager to start answering them. If you haven't submitted your question by this point, now's a great time to go ahead and type your question into the Q&A window in your WebEx client so we can get your answers before we run out of time here. We have about 12 minutes So I have a couple of questions myself, but let's get started with the questions that the audience has already asked. So the first question we have in queue here for our panelists, question comes in, it says, at my organization, our real estate and IT teams are ready to deploy the system and the software, but we don't have the change management program you keep talking about. Is that critical, or can we get started without it?
It's absolutely critical. It's just so critical. I mean, one of my pet peeves about this whole agile work, flexible work movement is that there's never been like a Six Sigma for it, where everybody says, okay, this is how you do it right. You go to this step and this step and this step and this step, and everybody sort of use these processes that have been vetted. And so what happens is you start to deploy, and then you realize, oh wait, people don't know how to use this technology. I mean, we don't know how to use most of the technology we already have, let alone new technology. And so, yeah, I mean, you've really got to get, it needs to be a cross-functional team. So regardless of who initiates the workplace change, if it's coming out of IT, you need to involve the folks in real estate because it's going to have an impact in real estate. You need to involve the folks in HR because, they're the people. You need to involve the folks in sustainability because, some of what you're going to be doing has sustainability implications. And as I said before, you also want to bring in the people at marketing. They can help you craft your message. But, I would highly recommend you take a step back and bring in some change management resources before you deploy. Nika, do you have any feelings about that?
I absolutely agree, but I also think it's really important to socialize the idea that you're going to be learning as you go, and you'll have to adjust things. So you may have to, revisit your policy once you've already published it a year later, because you're learning things all the time from this new way of working, and so that's why it's so key to involve the right kind of stakeholders. And also, in the pilot phase, I think it's a really wise idea to come up with an organic grassroots cadre of what I call early adopters. And that sometimes can help organizations through the change process as well, because you invite people to be a part of that, and they're able to test out technology, try the training, see how it resonates, and provide real candid feedback from any level throughout the organization.
One of the neat things I think that's coming down the road in big data, I mean, it's already here, but it's not widely available, is resources to actually identify who are the influencers, who are the people that, people look to when they're trying to decide on something, that, who are the leaders and who are the followers. And if you can bring those people on board, the leaders on board first, it really helps to make the change easier.
Great. Thank you so much. That was great feedback. So the next question from our audience actually speaks to kind of training. So the question is, often employees are or can be trained to do their job remotely, but this person says that their experience with the distributed workforce is really the challenges with managers, and they may not have the experience in managing a distributed workforce. So therefore they have the fears of the perceived loss of control. How would you assess managers as to whether or not they're equipped to manage a distributed workforce, and what resources are available, and how to get these managers trained? And I think it's kind of, if you were speaking to that earlier, Kate, but if you can elaborate on that just a bit.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's absolutely fundamental to this, those middle managers. And since, the 4 decades that these transitions have been going on, they've been by far the hardest group to overcome. And, I think it's because managers largely don't know how to manage their existing workforce. We were brought up in the management days of sweatshops and typing pools. I mean, that stuff is still, being able to see the back of someone's head equates to managing them. But it's just not true. And it's not true regardless whether they're in the office or outside the office. It doesn't matter whether your people are, 9 feet, 9 floors, or 9 miles away. If you don't know what they're doing and whether they're working and whether they're working on the right things and whether they're meeting their goals, then you're really not managing. You're babysitting. It's a particular problem because often people are promoted into management positions from technical positions, and they're not given the training. I mean, particularly in the last 5 years or so, companies have cut back on a lot of the training that they used to offer in management. There are some natural managers, and so you want to pull them out as the leaders. In terms of how do you identify and how do you understand whether they're ready, there are readiness assessments that you can use. You can also use sort of the simple gauge. If they're fearful, then they probably are not quite trained to do this kind of thing. And there are a lot of training programs. The AgilWork program has some of the eWork training that is centered specifically on how do you manage a distributed workforce, how do you work in a distributed team, and sort of touches on all of those the skills that are needed to be effective.
Hey, Kate, this is Mika. I wanted to piggyback on something that you mentioned. At OPM, we have actually a suite of leadership and candidate assessments, just like you were mentioning, that really help to customize the kinds of critical skills needed in certain occupations to plan for, with regards to succession planning, your next wave of future leaders, and also assess those who are currently leaders to see where there are skills gaps and competency gaps. And it's nice because they're interweaving with some of our mobility management training as well for supervisors and for employees. But what's nice is that it also gives you kind of an assessment of how your current workforce of leaders are equipped to manage in a modern and mobile and agile workforce that embraces really all kinds of flexibilities, including telework. So it's not just telework, it's all of the attributes that are needed to really be a modern leader, future leader.
Exactly. Modern leader regardless of where your people are.
Exactly.
Great. Yeah, those are great examples. And there were several questions that ask about training and resources. So your responses were kind of covering several questions here all at once. Thanks so much for that feedback. The next question from the audience, I think we have time for one more before we wrap up here. The question was, can you think of an example of an organization where the new workplace was initially embraced and subsequently ran into challenges? And if this has happened, is it a frequent thing, and how can you mitigate these risks? How would you recommend mitigating these risks?
Before this session, we talked about not wanting to answer any questions about Yahoo. And here I'm going to bring it up because I think that was the perfect example of an organization that let mobility happen rather than make it happen. And so by doing that, they didn't undergo the training. They didn't plan. They didn't involve the constituents. If a leader doesn't know where their people are and what they're doing, that's a sign of poor management, not poor workplace strategy. And so, I think they're the shining example of an organization where it because it wasn't intentional, it failed. And it's funny because we just hear so much about it. You don't hear about all of the successes. One company or two companies have trouble with this, and all the successes go out the window. But I actually turn it around, and I think it's a good example of why being intentional about this is so critical.
Great.
Mika, do you want to talk about any government failures? I'm kidding. Never mind.
What I can talk about, though, specifically is just my experience in leading some of these initiatives. And what I've seen work, first and foremost, is to set the groundwork. So really looking at your policies, but again, not just from the perspective of human resources or human capital or facilities, as an integrated approach. And early on, what's nice is in the federal government, what you're seeing is a trend to really engage our labor partners early on in what's called pre-decisional involvement, PDI. So what's interesting is that private sector organizations can apply these same kind of tactics by maybe reaching out to employee resource groups or grassroots organizations who work on employee wellness and support initiatives, and really getting folks involved in the early stages of helping to provide feedback and input on the policy, and then shaping maybe measurable goals and objectives and outcomes that an organization is trying to look for. That is the best way I've seen to slowly roll out a process that's going to change your organization's way of working and thinking. It's really to open the floodgates and allow people to be involved, because when they're involved, they become champions of the change and they feel connected to it more so.
I would also recommend that, there's lots of great resources out there. Go to the conferences. The International Facilities Management Association, for example, has a group, a community called Workplace Evolutionaries. And, it's got 2 days of tracks at their annual conference in New Orleans that's devoted entirely to these kinds of topics. A number of the big groups are getting on this, and so you can gather a lot of this information for free.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mika. I want to thank each of you for taking the time to share your knowledge and your experience with us today. We also want to thank our audience. Thank you all for attending today this webinar and asking such great questions. This webinar has been recorded, and you will receive a link in your email so you can share today's excellent presentation with others in your organization. So keep your eye out on your email inbox for details on this webinar, as well as next month's webinar. We'll be talking about change management. There were several questions that came up today with regard to how important is change management. It's critical. So stay tuned to your email inbox for some information on next month's webinar on change management, and our larger educational event that's coming up in September called Agile Workplace Conference on September 23rd. Until then, thanks again for all of us at AgilQuest, and you guys have a great day.